This podcast is brought to you by Penji. Penji is a creative subscription service that gives you access to pre-vetted, agency-trained creatives from all over the world. From graphic design to illustrations to social media management and web development, it's all included for one monthly price. It's time to say goodbye to the hassle of searching for top-notch creative talent. With Penji, you get quality and consistency delivered right to your inbox every day, carefully crafted for you by humans. So meet your new creative team today. Head over to penji.co for more and enter the coupon code located within the podcast show notes.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Fully Managed Podcast. This is the podcast where we're going to be discussing marketing, business tips, and so many other cool things to help assist you in your business journeys. I'm your host, Daniela, and I'm Penji's Partnership Coordinator. Today, I'm joined with a very special guest, a very long friend of ours, Ali White from Elyptics. Hi, Ali. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks. How about yourself?
I'm great. So excited to have you. Very excited for this episode. Now,
Happy to be here. Yeah, likewise excited.
yes. Now, to get started, to kind of break the ice a little bit, can you tell us about yourself, what you do, and about Elliptics, everything, so that everybody watching can get a feel of who you are and what you do?
For sure, yeah. So started Elyptics back in 2016. I've got a background myself prior to that working for a SaaS company and used to work in-house for a marketing team before that. So started Elyptics, which is a digital marketing agency. We very much focus on the lead generation side of things for clients. And we tend to cover quite a few different verticals, quite a few different service offerings as well. So predominantly search engine marketing with Google ads, meta ads, SEO and so on. But we also do get involved in organic social, web design and development as well. So sort of quite mixed in terms of what we do. Primarily when people come to us, they've got one main thing that they want to resolve, which is leads. They want more leads, better quality leads. And so that's what our business does and helps, like I say, on quite a few different verticals across quite a few different countries as well, which is quite exciting.
That's very interesting. What countries are you predominantly working with clients?
So we're mainly obviously based out of the UK. So we're in Surrey, which is about half an hour, 45 minutes south of London. For anyone who wants the geographic reference. So most of our clients are around the UK, but we've got clients over in the States. We've got clients in Italy as well. In terms of we've got a vacation rental client over there that does the most amazing villas. If you're ever interested in traveling to Tuscany, get some good Italian food and see some lovely sights out there. So yeah, so like I say, mainly UK, but a mixed set of clients across the globe.
Interesting. I'm asking because I'm curious, in America with everything that's going on with the ban of TikTok, I think a lot of B2C companies are concerned about how that's going to affect marketing for them because a lot of B2C companies have begun to use TikTok with digital marketing and integrating that platform into their digital marketing strategies. I think a lot of companies have integrated that into their um, strategies. And I'm curious if something like this is going to affect your clients or if there's a concern. Even if they're not American, I'm concerned. I wonder if that sort of is going to affect it directly because maybe they might have an American audience. Or do you think that this is something that's completely removed? I talked to someone who was in the SaaS world yesterday. His target audience were like SaaS companies and B2B companies, and he said he wasn't that concerned with the TikTok ban. So I'm curious about how that has been for you and for your business and your clients.
For sure. So I mean, I think a lot of our clients are slow on adopting TikTok. So I think from that perspective, there's not going to be like an immediate impact for them. But I do think at the end of the day, users are what makes these apps popular and obviously, that will drive their own success. So I think from a UK perspective, we've not got TikTok getting banned. But if there's less users on the platform becomes less relevant and therefore potentially less useful in that way. The thing I see though is the sort of like opposite point to that at the moment is where are people going to go instead? A lot of our clients have been on other platforms like Instagram and so on for a long time. And as I'm sure you appreciate, and anyone out there who's trying to grow their presence online, trying to grow it through I'd say more traditional routes like Instagram, Facebook, and so on, are much, much harder than TikTok. Because on TikTok, because it's very much driven by the single piece of content you put out, not your follower base. There's the opportunity, someone I think phrased it, so I'm stealing this from someone else, but I can't remember who it is to give them credit. Like, every piece of content you put out there is effectively you're buying a lottery ticket, and yes, it may flop, but there's a high chance it lands as well if you put the right hook and piece of content together. So I think from that perspective, we're not going to see anything negative. We typically find for a lot of our clients anyway that the main part of their growth on the lead side of things is going to be if they're on social platforms. It's not going to be through the organic social. It's through leveraging the paid aspect of these platforms. So I think no is the answer from what we would expect. But I do think for American-based businesses, it's obviously allowed a huge amount of exposure to a number of, very much your small sort of mom and pop style businesses, where anyone can get their message out there and compete with massive corporates. Obviously, the highly polished video edits and so on don't actually go down as well on platforms like TikTok. And obviously, the big sort of thing that's coming through with TikTok from an opportunity perspective is the live selling as well. So for any e-com sites out there, that was going to be a huge thing. And I think if you're based in the States and the ban does go ahead on, is it Sunday it's supposed to go ahead, I think?
Yeah, Sunday. I think like the 19th. When is the 19th?
Yeah, I think,
Monday. Yeah, Sunday. The Sunday. I was just checking it.
yes. If it does go ahead, I do feel, you won't get the same, yes, people will put more effort into the other platforms because they'll have to, but you won't get the same momentum behind, certainly won't get the same exposure unless Meta or one of the other platforms does a fundamental change to how they're pushing the content and how their algorithm drives stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to ask this question because I'm curious about how it's gonna affect people and businesses. I am not American, so like personally, I'm not affected by it. But I do think it's a big change. And it's gonna change a lot of the way that I think like if I use TikTok, I wonder how that experience is gonna be now that this huge part of the population that uses it, right? The users that are using it, how are they going to affect it? And then I think about it in a more marketing perspective, right? Marketing wise, I think, especially with B2C, I know in America, TikTok shop is really big. I don't know if they have that in the UK. So they
Yeah, reason.
use it a lot to drive sales, right? So it makes me wonder if that's going to sort of have a snowball effect on other.
Yeah, for sure. I guess it'll be there'll be two sides of the coin, and for the people it takes away from the platform, like you say, for us, say being based in the UK, for any companies that stay on it in the UK, they get their voice isn't going to have as big an audience to resonate with, because obviously if they sell to America and so on, that's going, but there'll be less voices crowding the space over here as well, because obviously a lot of American content, a lot of American creators and businesses are selling through TikTok in the UK. So suddenly that sort of competitive element just disappears. So there's like less market, but potentially a larger share for voices over here.
Yeah, for sure. And I know that you talked about how you focus mainly on lead gen, right? Lead generation. I know that social media, like we were speaking about TikTok and all of these, like Instagram, all of these have been very big for a lot of companies for lead generation, but it's not the answer for everybody, right? I've spoken to people who say that they don't use social media for lead generation because they're in industries that are very niche, especially like B2B. I think, they usually focus on lead generation in different ways, more like SEO approaches and that sort. Um, what do you find is more successful with your clients, or how have you sort of been able to navigate it? I think regardless of the business that you're in, lead generation is always something that you're trying to figure out, no matter where you are at in your sales
Yeah.
funnel, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us and our clients, typically the the most successful route is through search. And that's a combination usually of search engine optimization and also paid search ads. So predominantly Google ads, because obviously the majority of the share is in Google's favor. And, you know, I think the reason for that is because the intent for the consumer is there. Like they're going to Google or whichever search engine they use to answer a question or look for, you know, the solution to their problem. And so the intent there, they've got the high intent ready to sort of, depending on the query and so on, but they've got the intent there usually to transact. So as long as when that's happening, you know, a website, you know, we try and do it for our clients, of course, comes up at the top of the results, then hopefully the consumer navigates there and then the website does its job to convert those users, which obviously leads into the conversion rate optimization piece, design layout and usual cues and triggers, as you know. Again, though, that's like changing because we've got AI answers starting to come out more and more on more and more search queries now. So, you know, we haven't seen much loss in traffic for our clients at the moment. We are starting to see larger amounts of queries, like I say, have the AI answers come up for them. I think certainly everything that we understand and we're trying to do for our clients to help position them in a good place. And, you know, the recommendation for anyone out there looking to position themselves in that good place is to sort of follow Google's helpful content guidelines. So making sure that, you know, if you're putting a piece of blog content out there, that you're not just, you know, rehashing what's already been done a number of different ways, you know, put your unique angle, your unique experience in there. And most businesses out there, when they're looking for lead gen, they've got a wealth of experience that they can lean on. It's just demonstrating that and showcasing that, so to speak, to potential customers.
Yes, for sure. And I wanted to actually bring that up. You kind of jumped the gun there.
Sorry.
With AI? No, no, no. I mean, great, because like I wanted to ask that change, right, about SEO. I ChatGPT and like all of these, I think going back to TikTok, I guess, I've noticed that a lot of users have begun to use social media and AI for search engines, right? Like
Yeah, 100%.
I find myself doing that, right? Like I find myself sort of going into into some sort of like Instagram and then Googling like, I don't know, a salon if I want to cut my hair, right? Like not Googling, but I guess I'm Instagramming things. But
For sure. No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
and that has changed because I think back when we were, I guess like the 2010s, early 2000s, when the internet was a different place than it is right now, people would Google, right? Like that was the main search engine. And then there were some people who would use Bing and all of these other ones, but Google has been the main one. And it still is, but all of these other platforms are being used as search engines. And like you said, AI is a really big player, and ChatGPT, I think, is beginning to be a very big competitor because people are asking ChatGPT a lot of questions. Uh,
Mm.
that going like my question, and you kind of said it didn't affect your clients. Um, what was about how affected you think this has changed for how you do lead generation and things like that? But I'm wondering, how are you planning towards the future for it, right? Like, what do you think you're going to do as, because I feel like this is just going to keep growing. Um,
Yeah,
other
really good.
they're going to come up. Like, we're talking about ChatGPT right now and TikTok and Instagram. And then a year from now, we'll be talking about another app that we have no idea exists right now, right? So, how is that? How are you managing all of these changes that are happening?
Yeah, so I mean, like I say, the AI overviews and so on aren't taking much away at the moment. The amount they are taking away is growing, and as you said, that's going to only continue from here. So that goes very much into making sure that, you know, like I say, clients and businesses out there are putting themselves at the forefront, using their expertise and knowledge, because that's the sort of area that the AI is going to struggle to cover the most. If it's a general sort of roundup post about how to do something basic, then AI is going to be able to answer that no problem. I mean, you can easily do that now if you go to ChatGPT, Gemini, or any of the other Claude or any other platforms. You can ask it to put together a piece of blog content for you. If the tools can do it for you now, then there's no point in you trying to cover that topic because they already know how to explain it. You know, I think very much leaning on, like I say, the first-hand experience. From our perspective, that fits back into the actual social media side of things because we very much adopt an approach of looking at what are the questions people, are going to these platforms needing solutions for. And as you said, like a lot more people are using TikTok search to find solutions. So the SEO aspect that was predominantly associated with search engines in terms of Google now actually needs to be applied to search engines like TikTok, because that is what it's becoming. So making sure that when you're looking at answering that piece, or putting together a piece of content to answer those questions, that you don't just do it in the written form in terms of your website and a blog piece of content. How can you turn that into a great piece of video content as well? And if you've got an existing website with that presence, you can go and look through tools like Google Search Console and stuff like that and see what you're already ranking high for. That's like those query related things, and then produce off the back of that. So from our perspective, what we're recommending to people is to look more holistically now, not just look at the search landscape in terms of Google search and so on, but look in terms of the search landscape in terms of TikTok and so on. And TikTok's got ways you can actually look at how you are appearing in their search now, which is quite interesting. I think also, a change we will potentially see coming down the line, but I'm not sure in what guise it will come and how it will come about. But at the moment, obviously, Google have been taking and scraping, as have all these AI tools, as much information as they can out there. Google did their tie-up with Reddit, and obviously, that's why Google have done that, is because a lot of people will go to Google, and, you're saying you go to TikTok looking for, how to do this, or Instagram, how to do this, and so on. A lot of people will do a Google query, but add the word Reddit on the end because they want to see the Reddit forum results, not the actual, like, what can be often junk results that appear at the top there. So I think from that perspective, there's going to be some changes. But Google and these other AI platforms, they're scraping everything up. At some point, Google are going to have to look, I would have thought, at rewarding creators in the same way TikTok, YouTube, and other platforms do. They all create the creator rewards programs. Once you hit a certain follower or view threshold, you can start monetizing your content. And I would think there's going to be something in that way that comes along with the search engines, because otherwise people are just going to stop producing the content if there's no value for them.
Yeah, no, and I actually feel like I wanted to ask about this. How do you feel about consumers being just more educated in general? I think back when people were on the internet still, like earlier, marketing was there, but it was a little bit more subtle. It wasn't as in your face. And a lot of times people didn't even realize that a marketing strategy was being used on them, right? Would go to a search engine. And I think right now, if you go to Google, I Google lasagna recipe, right? And the first 3 links that are gonna pop up are gonna say sponsored or, like, and so I know that the person, like, the company that is trying to push this lasagna recipe on me is doing SEO and doing paid ads and, like, trying really hard to get that link up there when I Google lasagna so that it's gonna be the first one I click. Um, and I think, like, okay, yes, I work in marketing, but I feel like I've spoken to people who are aware of this without having to be marketers themselves, without understanding what the search engine optimization term is, but they have this knowledge that I think consumers have that a lot more nowadays. You see a lot of influencers that, call themselves experts who are also telling you like all of these things about, oh, this is how you get famous, this is blah blah blah. And I feel like all of this stuff has made for consumers to just be a lot more aware, right? And you've seen the changes of not just them being more aware, but then they're more demanding for transparency. I constantly see controversies of either celebrities or companies who are like, "You're not transparent, like, this is a lie, blah, blah, blah." Um, how do you think that affect or, in the possible future, the marketing world or the marketing sphere for companies that are trying to sort of break into SEO? And then it's weird because I think people don't even trust reviews nowadays, right? Because a lot of people think that, like, how do I know that you didn't get paid to do this review? Yeah, with that sort of mistrust that exists, which I think it's really it shows when you said that people will Google like Reddit because they're going to trust a Reddit user more that they're going to trust some website because they feel like it's more genuine and it's a person's opinion. So
Yeah.
I think it really affects marketing because it makes you less trustworthy inherently, regardless of what you're doing. How are you sort of preparing for that, or what is your opinion on it? I guess your take.
Yeah, so I'm very much the same, like same thoughts as you, and going back to like the recipe example you get, like how frustrating is it not just the sponsored results, but you click into one of those recipes, and obviously in order to game the SEO system, they'll explain this whole backstory as to their grandmother coming from Italy and the backstory of pasta, just so you can get a recipe on making lasagna or something like that. So I think I think there has been that sort of like erosion of trust in that aspect. And obviously, there's been certain things that have come up. I don't know if you know of like Stephen Bartlett's Diary of a CEO. So he's got he's got like a massive following in the UK. He's been on Dragon's Den, which is the UK equivalent of Shark Tank and stuff like that. And he's got wrapped over the knuckles for advertising a product that he's invested in but hasn't disclosed that investment. So he's recently been wrapped over the knuckles of that. So there's a lot of like transparency related stuff that's come out. I think it's going to get like in some ways worse because we've now got I can't remember the name of the brand, but one of the brands, I think it's Mango, has
Oh
started
yeah.
using AI influencers now. So I think like the transparency thing becomes even more blurred. But to your point, well, that's why video content, in addition to blog content and putting that sort of like first party perspective is so powerful because anyone can grab a camera now, and it doesn't matter if you're doing it on something. I've got a little DJI Osmo camera I'm recording on here, or whether you're doing it on your iPhone or whatever it be, but seeing the actual people behind the businesses and seeing what's going on and being part and being involved, once people get a better understanding of who they're shopping from, who they're looking at doing business with, there's much more likely to get that trust element. And that's really going back to what I was talking about earlier when I was talking about like helpful content from Google. That's off their guidelines. And Google brought out a while back their EAT signals, EAT, which became EEAT, for expertise, authoritative, trustworthy type signals that they're looking at. And in the written content, it's things like, has it got an author's bio on the article, and who is that author, and what's their credibility, and is it, if it's a general website, like for example, talking about lasagna, why are they suddenly writing a piece of content to do with something to do with medical history, or that sort of like, it's so disjointed they shouldn't be in the same place. And I think from a marketing perspective, that's why any brands and businesses out there that can showcase more of what they are, what's going on behind the scenes, why they've made those decisions. People love to follow that journey and see the sort of like warts and all of it. And I think for businesses that can showcase that, they'll see such a better trajectory on their growth, because like you say, there's so much faceless stuff out there, and there's so much manipulative behavior out there from not just brands in terms of how they operate, usual things like all those dark patterns where on websites they'll do things like 10 people have been looking at this over the past 5 minutes, when that's not the case. You can see in the source code half the time it's just a randomizer that's giving a number out. It's not actually data off the back of who's looking at it. So I think people are done with all that. People want to see more, and I think, like I say, brands that can showcase that are going to do so much better moving forward.
Also, I think like there's like I've noticed there's a demand for, I guess, I don't know if the word is authenticity, moral high ground. I don't know. That sounds
I
bad.
think authenticity works. Yeah, I know it's weird, and I agree with you. Yeah, I think yeah, not trying to pull the wool over my eyes.
Ethical things, like, I think people have demanded a lot of ethical branding, or, like, managing of a business. You were talking about, the CEO that was in a scandal, and I remember I saw, like, a few months ago, maybe a couple months ago, like, not that long ago, that on Dragon's Den Canada, they had, like, an issue because these 2 people showed up, they were trying to sell, like, a boba drink, and then they got called out for being insensitive because they were not sort of, I think the way that they presented, like, their pitch and then the opinion of the business people who were thinking about investing, Um, like they got a lot of backlash from the community once the episode came out. To the point where one of the people that had invested in them said that she was going to pull out and she was not going to invest anymore because they were not being culturally sensitive. And then that lady ended up still getting criticized because they were like, "You're just doing that because you got canceled, but you would have invested in them otherwise." And
Right.
um, I think it just went to show, like, I think that wouldn't have happened before, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
It's a huge change. Like, I think a few years back, not even maybe like 10, 15 years back, like a company like this wants to start and it looks trendy and the product is good and it's a tasty drink and that's it. That's that. Nobody cares about who's behind it. And nowadays it's like, there's a lot more that comes to it where like the story of the company was a huge deal.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I think, like you say, people are fed up of having the these sort of like corporations just or CEOs or whoever it be just take the mick. Like at the end of the day, I think there's not going to be an overreaction in a lot of circumstance to many things, but people do want to understand behind the scenes and, like I say, understand what's where if it's a product, where the materials source from, what's going on, how are people treating their workers, and all those bits and bobs. Because again, that's a big thing. Like what's actually happening with the employees behind the scenes as well. How are they looked after? How are they treated? And I think I can't talk in global market terms, but certainly from the UK's perspective, I think this current year for the UK is going to be a tough business trading year. I really do. I think we're already seeing for a lot of businesses, struggles, where, for example, like biking, as in cycling, was hitting a huge boom a number of years ago. There's a bike shop opposite us that's been in the town for ages that's just shut their doors. I think it's going to be tough trading for a number of different reasons, and so I think with that in mind, there's going to be a close eye watched on how businesses react and how they sort of like portray themselves moving forwards.
Yeah, it's happening. I'm from El Salvador. Something similar is happening here. I think we have a lot of changes with the business world because tourism is growing. We've never had tourism here. Like, we'll get like a couple of people coming every like once in a while, but we also don't have tourists. Like the tourism industry hasn't been very big, and for I think since the we've gotten elected, like the new president, we've also had the tourism industry growing because he's been investing a lot of it in it, and it's really affecting the way that businesses are growing and changing. Because at the same time that it's growing, it's also killing a lot of like smaller businesses. And a lot of like foreign big corporations are coming here and setting up like big hotels, and like resorts and like surfing is really big, so they'll just have like a lot of like surfing stuff going on. And I think it's really, really changing how the sphere is handled. A lot of people are having to start to learn basic English because all of a sudden, all of these like spots are filled with tourists who speak only English, and people here don't really speak English. And I think like that gentrification is really starting to sort of change how the market is being operated in. And some things are kind of like struggling while some of them are doing. It's a very big change as well. So something similar, I think, in a different font, but the change is happening, and I think it's gonna be this year. I mean, the president said he was gonna do a lot of changes. I don't know if he's actually going to do it, but if that happens, um, people are gonna have to sort of like change a lot of the way that they handle their own business.
Yeah, no, I completely get it. And in Europe as well, like there's been a lot of that. There was a lot of that in Spain, the tourism issues earlier this year, or earlier end of last year, should I say, where obviously things like house prices and so on, and locals wanting to be able to live in what has now become densely populated tourist areas with lots of rentals on the likes of Airbnb and so on. There's been a big reaction to it. So yeah, I think yeah, that's can see more of that as well in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that was a bit of a tangent, but you kind of just reminded me of it with everything that you were talking about the cycling business. Because I think it's just kind of happening all the time. Like the world is just moving like this nowadays. Or maybe it was moving really fast before and I just never noticed. It just feels like everything is really happening all the time, right?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of variables. I mean, I think obviously you've got things like inflation's creeping up everywhere at the moment. Everyone's trying to wrestle with interest rates. Are they going to continue cutting them, or are they going to keep them the same? I think yeah, as a general sort of like trading side of things, the flip side to that, bizarrely though, is you look at like some of the massive, like Magnificent Seven in the US. Your Apple, Tesla. Microsoft, all of them, their stocks are trading at all-time highs. So like there's also, I feel like, this weird disconnect between what sort of seems to be happening from a reported perspective, but what's actually happening in local businesses,
Yeah.
both in the UK and abroad.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, Donald Trump being elected is also certainly going to change. A lot of the stuff that happens in America affects the rest of the world just because, America is such a big country. Before we finish, Ali, I want to give you the space to tell all of our followers and our viewers and our listeners if anything that we spoke about today resonated with them, and they would like to work with you, if anybody from the UK, even if they're not American based or wherever they are. The floor is yours to tell them where to go.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you very much. So yeah, if anyone wants to talk about how we can potentially help with their lead generation, they're looking to help with their lead generation, they're looking to get their website read presence on Google improved so they're ranking more highly and like I say, getting more traffic and more leads through the business. Feel free to go to our website, elyptics.co.uk. You're also welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm Ali White at Elyptics. So yeah, just feel free to connect with me, have a conversation, see where you're at, see what's going on, and see how we can potentially work with you to help improve your leads.
Awesome. Yeah. And I will have the links to all of this in the description of the video for anybody watching, and the listeners go to the video. Thank you so much for doing this today, Ali.
Likewise, it was great chatting to you. Thanks very much for your time too.
Thank you, everyone. I'll see you on the next episode.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest, and to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend, and of course, subscribe.